This is what you're doing when you're on Zoom and you're like, wait.
And I keep going, whoop. Give me one more second, Lisa. Hold on. Because you don't see this part where it's loading for me. Okay.
No. All right.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Joint Animal Service Commission regular meeting for September 9th, 2024. We'll start off with some introductions. I'm Lisa Parsley, the chair from Olympia City Council. And this time I'm going to go to the Zoom meeting and have the two that are joining us by Zoom. Let's start off with Peter first.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm Peter Agabi, City Council member at Tonwood.
Hello, everyone. Mike Murphy. I'm the president of Thurston County Humane Society.
Excellent. Let's go with Joe McGugan. I'm gonna do a little switch up that I do sometimes with our other meetings, and I'm gonna have Sarah introduce the staff, so it speeds it up a bit.
Joe McGugan with Feline Friends of Olympia.
Vicki Smith, Deschutes Animal Clinic.
I'm Emily Klaus, Thurston County Commissioner, just here as an observer today.
Malcolm Miller, City of Lacey.
Okay, Sarah, would you like to introduce the staff?
I'm Sarah Hawk, Executive Director for Joint Animal Services, and with me tonight we have Sierra Tees, who's the Field Services Supervisor, and Megan McKay, who is our Volunteer and Outreach Coordinator.
Excellent. I'm assuming, because the way we put these together, if I'm gonna do an amendment, I have to do it before this, correct? For how the rest of it's gonna go?
I think we can just get a motion to approve the amended agenda and consent agenda items. So if you wanna, get a motion to do that, you can do
Okay.
that and proceed with all of them together.
Okay, I'm proposing an amendment to move business item C to A, because I have to leave the meeting at 6:15, and which Peter Gabi, the vice chair, will take over. So I would love to have a motion for the amended approval of the agenda and the consent agenda items, which are the agenda, the meeting minutes, and shelter statistics.
I would move that we approve the amended agenda and consent agenda items.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Any more discussion? All right, hearing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign? Okay, we've got an agenda and we've passed our consent. Do we have any public comment?
We have not received any written public comment. I do not see anybody in the room, nor have we received any interest in public comment. There's no one in attendance.
Excellent.
Nope, hold on, I got to promote to panelist.
Joining us right now is County Commissioner Wayne Fournier.
Okay, there we go.
Wayne, are you with us? Ooh, nope, still coming. Are you with us, Wayne? Hi, Wayne.
I'm at soccer practice as well.
Oh, well, good. Multitasking, love it. Let us know when they score.
Practice, not game.
Oh, okay. So let's move on to our amended business items, starting with 2025 jurisdictional assessment estimates. And I believe that's with you, Sarah, is that correct?
It is. All right, good evening. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the jurisdictional assessment estimates for 2025. Keep in mind, we have already emailed jurisdictional assessments out to the staff of all jurisdictions. So this presentation is just for you guys to keep in mind what we're estimating currently. All numbers are not final at this time. We will not have final numbers until later in the year. But these are what the estimates are currently looking at this time. So some things to keep in mind with the 2025 jurisdictional assessments is that there is no field rebate coming into 2025. We are fully staffed. We are providing all services across the board, and so there will be no rebate this year. We continue to use reserves for vet services as discussed when we approved the 2023 budget. JASCOM approved the use of restricted medical reserves to help pay for our veterinary department. So our veterinarian and vet assistant and some of those supplies. And again, final numbers are pending. So total assessment estimates for all 4 jurisdictions is a little over $2 million. This is roughly an 8 to 10% increase when everything is said and done for the jurisdictions overall. So it breaks down with Thurston County being a little over $1 million. Olympia sits at 390. Lacey sits at 417 and Tumwater sits at 190. And again, these are estimates. They're going to fluctuate a little bit. I cannot predict that they'll go up or down until I have final numbers. Some of those are staffing that come from City of Lacey, and some of those liability and insurance numbers that I am waiting for.
Are these per capita?
These are per capita. So these are all per capita assessments, which we'll talk a little bit about. And just as a reminder, so this was the agreed upon use of reserves back in 2023. But since we did not actually hire our staff veterinarian until the very end of 2023, JASCOM decided to shift that. So instead of us starting to reduce those use of reserves in 2024, we will start that more in 2025. So really, we'll be looking at our first reduction over the next 4 years, starting in 2025. And that was because we hired our veterinarian so late in 2023 that we agreed to roll over those reserve funds into 2024.
Can I ask a question on long-term revenue stream for the veterinary care? Have we begun to have a long-range plan for that?
Besides building in those assessment costs that you guys are paying for? Are you looking in terms of other services besides
Well,
shelter services?
my concern is that veterinary medicine is going to exceed the CPI, in which case you are going to end up, you probably needed to build that in just to have adequate staffing and keep staffing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All that is built in.
Yeah,
It's built in
okay.
with our steps and
Thank you,
everything. We're good.
sorry.
No, you're
Interruption.
right. It's great questions. I love that a veterinarian is asking them. So just as a reminder for our budget breakdown, this is our entire budget, so not just the assessments. But our entire budget is comprised of, with 56% going to shelter operations, and only about 20% actually goes towards field operations. So the majority of our services are what we consider the quote unquote back end, which is in shelter care. So that's veterinary medicine, holding of feeding care and holding of the animals is the highest percentage of our costs. Field, while that is something that's certainly talked about and is something that people think about when they think of animal services, that is not the majority of our budget, nor where the majority of the care and operational concerns are needed. So the majority of staff, all of it goes into shelter operations. So just to give you guys a little bit of perspective, I wanted to show you what the jurisdictional assessments would have been in comparison to this year's without the rebate. So this is looking at what the jurisdictional assessments would have been in 2023 and 2024 comparatively, had the jurisdictions not been receiving a field rebate. When you look at those numbers and then compare them with it, you can see that the assessments have been reduced for the last 2 years because of those assessments. So that's why it's going to feel like a slightly higher jump this year, because we don't have that offset in the rebate this year. We calculate jurisdictional assessments by per capita, which is outlined in the interlocal agreement. As populations throughout the jurisdictions grow and shift, so do the assessments. So back in 2022, when there was some annexations going on between the jurisdictions, you can see where the shift was from 2021 to 2022, where you saw that dip in unincorporated Thurston County and then an increase here in some of the cities. And so as those different negotiations change and the population shift, you'll see the per capita assessments shift as well with that. So how we calculate some of those jurisdictional assessments, the jurisdictions have two ways that their assessments can have revenues offset to reduce their overall assessment. One is shared revenues. So shared revenues consist of contracts, donations, shelter fees, those other revenues that are not tied specifically to what we call our direct revenues. Direct revenues are adoptions, reclaims, and licensing. And each jurisdiction gets a portion of the adoption fee, reclaim fee, and then all of the licensing. And those are how the two ways that we can offset either of those assessments. So when you look here, I use City of Lacey as a perfect example of their portion. This would be the total expense prior to the offsets taking place. And so when you see first you have grants, so we pull out the per capita for grants usage. And then we pull out direct revenues. So direct revenues, because they're tied to residents specifically in the jurisdiction, they're going to vary per jurisdiction. And it's not broken out per capita. So it's actually beneficial for the jurisdictions to promote adoptions, licensing, and reclaiming their pets, because the more pets that are adopted, reclaimed, and licensed within their jurisdiction, it actually helps to reduce their assessment. For the shared revenue, that is dispersed per capita. So all of our contracts, so Yelm, Nisqually, JBLM, those are part of shared revenues. The additional adoptions out of jurisdiction adoption, adoption promotion, grants, donations, any of that gets distributed per capita. Does that make sense so far? Okay.
Wait, was it 685? What was that?
That's before.
Okay.
So once you take into consideration all of the revenue offsets, then your total becomes 417 roughly.
Thank you.
Some impacts to the budget that we are looking at this year. So we do, of course, have COLA and step increases for staff. There is no fuel rebate. Medical department expenses, again, are offset by the restricted veterinary care donations. And then we're also, to take into consideration, we are doing some departmental restructuring. So we're going to keep our full 22 FTEs, but we're going to shift around a few things. So when our animal and veterinary care manager left, we did a reassessment of whether or not we wanted to hire for that position. And we decided to actually convert the position to an LVT instead of rehiring a manager to help with the medical team. So once we have a full medical team, we won't actually have to contract relief veteran like LVTs to come in on surgery days, and that'll actually overall reduce our cost for medical care, because we have an LVT on staff and we'll actually be able to do more surgeries and look at more animals, because currently our vet is doing a lot of tech work on top of her veterinary work.
You have a VA veterinary assistant.
We do. We have a vet assistant already. So currently she's operating with just a VA, and then we hire an LVT on surgery days. We're going to convert our field services supervisor. She will be converted into the animal welfare and field manager. And so she will also oversee the animal care team along with field starting next year.
So, can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Our field supervisor is going to be promoted into a manager's position, And she's going to not only manage the field department, but she will manage the animal care department as well.
So I think maybe just to Sarah, and correct me if I'm wrong for a little bit more context. So some of the managerial aspects that were under the animal and veterinary care manager are transitioning to the
Correct.
positions.
Yeah, so some of the responsibilities that were under the animal care manager will transfer to the field services supervisor into this new management position. And then some of the other stuff, specifically medical, will transition over to our operations manager. I have an org chart, don't worry. And then our operations manager will let go of field, so he'll have no field oversight anymore. And then take on the management of the medical department. So this is what our current organizational chart looks like. And so it's with 22 full-time equivalents. We still will have 22 full-time equivalents, but this is the shifting that this looks like now. So a little bit able to flex out some of those positions, be able to promote from within, and also acquire additional help that'll make life easier. So this transition will help us with the overall budget as well, because we're not increasing any FTEs with this change. And then just as a reminder, again, in case anybody missed it, overall, this is the jurisdictional assessment percentages. And again, a reminder, you will not see final totals until our November budget presentation. I'm sorry, we do an October budget presentation. So you should have final numbers in October. We will have our budget hearings in both November and December and vote on the budget in December. With that, are there
Sarah?
any?
Sarah, can you go back to that Lacey's estimate, the slide before this one?
Not this one?
Not this one, the one before this one, where you did the offsets.
Oh, yeah. This one?
Yes, this one. So for the 2024 assessment estimate, it is 417,990. And then the other slide is just 417. What's the difference?
This was giving an example. I rounded down for this because, to be honest, this number is going to change. This isn't the final total right now. This is an estimate and it could go up or down. So in the other slides, it is zeroed out just to make it simpler. So you guys aren't also having to remember down to the exact, in 23
Gotcha.
cents.
Gotcha,
That's
thank
all.
you.
Yeah.
I'll just
Thank you.
really quickly clarify too, that should say 2025 assessment. We'll make sure to update that, but that is, like Sarah was saying, an example for us, the city of Lacey specifically.
And did you saw, Peter, that Sarah emailed out the assessments? Because I got it when she sent it to Jay Birdie.
I sent mine to Lisa, but I can also forward it to you, Peter.
Sorry. Putting you on the
Okay, that would do. Please do.
Yep, absolutely.
It's more because as city council members, sometimes our council mates go, what? Okay, thank you. The only question I have would be more of a placekeeper for either the October or November is another conversation about reserves. Because I kind of want to know where we're going to get with that vet reserve. And then how do we refill it? If we're building those ongoing costs into the jurisdictions, which I think is fine. It'd still be nice to rebuild that reserve so that we can do stuff with it.
We do on a regular basis. The community has an option to give to our general fund, veterinary care or animal care. And so they do have the opportunity to donate specifically to medical in a general bucket, so to speak, so that we can use it for those types of things, whether it's emergency care or a forensic veterinarian to also helping with our own medical costs. So it does continually get replenished through donors as well.
Cool. Just for some of the new board members too, also, maybe just a discussion on that, and then some of our policies and what they mean. Because we have a few new board members.
Sure.
If you don't mind, with the budget discussion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? You guys good? Okay. Peter, Wayne, you guys good? Okay. We are going back to what would be now business item 5B, which is a volunteer program update with Megan.
Alrighty. Fantastic. Thank you. Alrighty, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm coming back from a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little raspy. I apologize. So I want to talk today about what we've been doing in the volunteer department at Joint Animal Services. For everyone's reference, I started at the beginning of April. So this is still really fun and new to us, and I'm hoping that this will just be a really positive presentation to show what we're doing. So that is me and my dog Denali, who I adopted from Tacoma Humane Society. My background is in nonprofit. More specifically, I worked at the Tacoma Humane Society as their volunteer manager. Fell in love, adopted a few pets, and here I am. So I have a theory that why we do this work in animal welfare is because we have specific bonds or specific reasons that we date back to. Otherwise, we'd be pretty insane to do what we do every day. It's hard work and it's emotional work. So my why is Barbie, who's this 1-year-old German Shepherd who came into our shelter completely unsocialized, lived her whole life outside, and had no idea how to walk on a leash, probably didn't even know what it meant to have a ceiling over her head. So she came in, and myself and Becca, our positive outcomes coordinator, eventually got her to this position where she was calm inside. She learned what a leash was, and now she's adopted by a young single guy who takes her on hikes all the time. So she is my why I do it every day. So I just wanted to start off the presentation with that. So a basic overview of what our volunteer department roles are. So we have everything from our volunteers who can start at age 11, come into the shelter, and we really want them to be interactive with the public so that we build community. And we also are making sure that they're interacting with the animals. That's the fun stuff that they're there for. So this breaks down some of the things that we do, specifically the areas of growth that we want to focus on are fostering, which Becca has talked about previously, our positive outcomes coordinator, as well as our cat and adoptions. So that's people in the room with the adopters doing meet and greets, and then helping to make sure that we're matchmaking so that community members have a positive experience and get a great animal.
Hold on.
Alright.
Might be me. Try it again.
Woohoo, thank you. So that is what we do. And then how can we move forward from that? So something that we want to do is create a community of support and togetherness. When volunteers come into our shelter, we want them to feel like they're part of something bigger. And a lot of what we do is we take what people have done to animals and we undo it. We try and take the pain away through our vet care. We have our field service team that goes out and does the education so that we're breaking these generations who may not know how to care for animals properly. And then we have volunteers. They are our walking, talking billboards. When they leave the shelter, they represent us. They wear our shirts when they go to the grocery stores. They talk to their relatives. So we need to make sure they're having this positive experience. So how do we do that? So a big part of that is starting new. What I did when I came in is I created a volunteer survey to get a pulse on what was happening. I wanted to know the good and the not so good of the volunteer world. I also wanted to start off on the right foot with new volunteers. So that meant having an online presentation that was 5 minutes, which we currently have, accessible to anyone on the Joint Animal Services website. And then right away, they can fill out an application at the end. Let's take away some barriers. Before this, it was a 90-minute presentation, which I personally thought I would not sit through to be a volunteer. So how can we make it more engaging? And we also do weekly tours. So we have people come into the shelter, walk around, meet our staff members, see the animals, and learn more about it. And then also part of that is going to be our consistent communication, which I'll touch upon. So here are some of the results of that survey. So the big themes and takeaways from these are going to be community and giving back for the most enjoyable things about volunteering and fostering with us. That's fantastic. We want people to feel that way. But the issue is that we want to make sure that people feel that way and that they're empowered and that they're going out and they're talking about that. So furthermore, we just needed to see what their expectations were coming into the shelter. And what is touched upon is the lack of community, a feeling of loneliness when volunteers come in. Sometimes in the volunteer world, working in other organizations, things can feel very separate. We can feel that there is an otherness between volunteers and staff. And that was pointed out by our volunteers in this survey. Furthermore, there was a need for hands-on training. Prior to April, people came in, they had a video training, but no hands-on training. And shelter animals are very different than our at-home animals, so that's a big safety concern. So we changed that. So we made things fun. We put together a fun presentation I touched on. It's only 5 minutes online. And we started bringing people in. Let's bring them into the fold. I introduced them to staff members. I introduced them to our shelter cat, Eli, because who doesn't love a shelter cat? Also, go ahead.
So what's the difference between now and like how it was done before? I mean, obviously before it just wasn't as engaging. And
Yes.
maybe there was no tour. So now it's, hey, let's have fun with this. And so what was it like before?
So what it was like before was, let's say I am a member of the community. I would go on our website and I would sit through a 90-minute presentation where the previous coordinator would go through things verbally, but there wasn't any kind of pictures, videos, things to kind of break up that dialogue. So I get through these 90 minutes, I fill out my application, and then I would watch some videos online, come in for maybe a 20-minute meeting after hours with the coordinator. So no one's around except for the coordinator. So you have one person, which is a double-edged sword, right? I want to be the spokesperson for volunteers, but I cannot be their lifeline. I have to introduce them to other people. So that's really all that happened. And then they were kind of thrown in to sign up and that was really it.
So now they have like more interactive, engaging.
Yeah.
And they like, hey, take 5 minutes, take a look at this. And then come see us
Exactly.
and meet everybody and.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
And it was
now,
all online body language trainings,
Mhm.
and now we also do a combination of inline and in person.
Okay.
And they're also partnered with another volunteer to actually help with their first shift, to get them through and to show them around.
And this is new in the last 4 months?
yes, we officially launched our first tour. I want to say it was June 20th was the date. So that was our kickoff date.
Nice.
Yeah. So now if I'm a member of the public and I'm interested, it's a 5-minute presentation online. You get in to do a tour. Our tours cap out at 8 people. So that encourages people to come with their partners, to come with, we have a lot of people come with kids or grandkids. So it's a way for them to do tours together and they meet people.
How many times have you capped out?
I'm sorry?
How many times have you capped out at 8?
Oh gosh, not too many, to be honest. Reason being, I think people don't always know who we are. And I think a lot of it is changing public perception. People think it's sad to volunteer. And so it's really trying to make it empowering. So I would say total we've capped out 3 times and we have had about 10 tours. And our
That's actually
numbers.
good odds.
Yeah, that's pretty
That's
good.
good.
Yeah,
odds.
thank you. And our numbers when I first started volunteering is we had 50 volunteers and now we're up to close to 70.
And the other thing that Megan does is she doesn't hold the tours at the same time every week. It changes. And especially she changes those orientation times to times that we need filled with something. So it's the people who can attend those orientations, we're looking at those
Smart.
positions that need to be filled.
I love that you pair them up with a volunteer on the first shift.
Yes, it's really important and we call them volunteer trainers. So I think it also gives them a pride with what they're doing. And so we have someone specifically in our laundry, we have someone with cats and with dogs. And we have a checklist as well that they go over. So there's like an accomplishment of like, yes, I learned how to properly clean and sanitize this cat kennel. And then it gets submitted to me. I get to send them a fun congratulations email, and then they get to start self-scheduling. So it's more of a step in a process and part of the community.
How young did you say again?
11.
That's cool.
We can have a junior volunteer start from 11 to 13. They'll need to come in with an adult. So it could be a sibling or someone over the age of 18, parent or guardian. And then we have anyone else 14 and up can do literally everything. So they can do walking dogs on our property, cleaning kennels, meeting with potential adopters. So, yeah.
Megan, I think it's really incredible that the volunteer numbers have increased, to 70. Can you
Thank
just
you.
remind again the group of how many hours
Oh,
to
yeah.
volunteer work that is per year that goes
Oh,
into it?
Definitely. So we're at the point right now where we have about 500 to 600 hours a month of volunteer work. So when we have volunteers come in, the commitment we ask of them is that they commit to at least coming in once a month. So that's at least one person coming in 2 hours a month. And for the most part, we have people coming in weekly. And that's a very impressive amount because that's a lot to ask of someone to come in weekly.
So it's roughly 3 FTEs.
Mhm.
Last year, we had over 8,000 hours total in volunteers, and so it worked out to be like 3.67 FTEs in
Wow.
volunteer hours.
You had in there a value of that financial too.
I
didn't you?
did, and I don't have it now with me, but there is a national calculation of per hour, and it was close to like $100,000
Mhm.
in staffing.
Yeah, I'm really interested. Last I looked, it wasn't updated for this year. So I'm hoping towards the end of the year updates, but I'm happy to send that number over to Sarah. Because it is really interesting. And like I said, these are walking, talking billboards. There's only so much 20 staff can do and say, when it comes to how passionate we are. And these are also people who were aged 11 all the way up to, we have people who are probably hitting their 90s right now who are volunteering with us. And so you also have the spectrum of people they're talking to about. So it's just a really great way to spread awareness.
And it's vital to the staff, the work they do.
Yes, it creates a significant community and it also means that we can lean on each other in a different way.
Excellent.
So this cute pup right here is Sea Star. She's adopted and living on, I want to say 30 acres now. So she's living a great life. And she is a great transition point because we're talking a little bit about consistent communication. That's the next thing I flagged as a need to change. People don't know what they don't know. And a lot of the times there wasn't a place where there were regular emails going out to volunteers or even a person doing rounds. The coordinator wouldn't necessarily do in person. Hey, how are you, check-ins? So I started doing weekly newsletters. So the weekly newsletters go over statistics. It tells us how many animals have been adopted out so far that month, as well as how many volunteers have been in that month and the hours. So they can directly see that they're a number. Also, Sarah did a fantastic job talking about our volunteer hands-on training with the dogs and cats. And then we also have Champion Dog Program. So our Champion Dog Program is 3 volunteers who work with our animals that are highly stressed or under social. Sea Star, wonderful gal here, was a very stressed dog in her kennel, and she is a typical pitty who just wanted to talk. And unfortunately, that meant that when people came in to meet her, they were looking away. Cause they saw her as too much and too loud.
Mhm.
Exactly. And so what we do is we do play groups and we invite these three wonderful women who are these specialized volunteers to come to playgroup.
And these volunteers are specialized because they've actually gone through so much handling training that they're considered the highest handling training behavior that you can have for a volunteer. And so that's why they get to be a part of the Champion Dog Program. Other
Mhm.
volunteers can join, but currently we have 3 that have managed to get all the training complete in order to do this. And so they even do things like they give them extra one-on-one time that we can't. So they could spend several hours with one specific dog that needs it, rather than, you know, the staff spending, you know, 30 minutes here, 15 minutes there.
Mhm.
They can spend dedicated time, and then to hand it back over to Megan, they also then assist the staff with play groups.
Mhm. Yeah.
So these are volunteers who, that you've got people who have license to do these types of things?
Not licensed,
They
we've
just-
trained them.
You train these people.
Mhm.
Yep, they've gone through all the certified training that we have and understand all the safety protocols and how to handle some of these dogs that are probably a little bit more exuberant
Mhm.
than your average handler or even your novice beginning handler.
Mhm.
So,
So you've got handlers out of your volunteer group,
correct.
Mhm.
probably handpicked. Obviously.
Ones from enough time, able to handle and also have the interest. They come in more than sometimes once a week
Okay.
to work with dogs.
Definitely. Yep. They all have a minimum of one for short CDP Champion Dog Program shift. And then they usually do more on top of that. And they're usually involved in multiple ways in the shelter as well. For instance, one of the volunteers is going through the fear-free certification. So for the sheltering world, fear-free certification is a way for us to reduce fear, anxiety, and stress in the shelter. So it's something that, it's a 4-hour training online that's free for any volunteer. So it's something that we've really encouraged those 3 women who are doing that Champion Dog Program to do.
So the newsletter,
Mhm.
is it, I see that says volunteer newsletter.
Mhm.
Is that the part of the database that it's limited to? Or is,
Would JASCOM like to start receiving volunteer newsletters? We can.
It'd be
Yeah.
fun. Yes, yes.
Sounds great.
well, I'm saying, like, what about the people who adopted? You have,
Oh, that's not, I see where you're going. Yes.
Well, I think with that, it's a good question, and we certainly want to take a look at having an opt-in system so that people can have the decision to receive news moving forward.
I think that's a great idea. I think in a lot of ways, when it comes to reaching out to adopters, because I look for the newsletters to put together happy stories, or I call happy tales of adoption stories. And sometimes we're not as engaged, and an email can get lost so easily from the shelter saying, hey, how'd your adoption go? So I think it's a great idea, even if it was a monthly, letter, they could opt in and say, hey, I'm a part of this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
part of the big family.
exactly.
In TBD, there might be some more stuff coming that has to do with your question at a
Sure.
later date presentation.
yeah, in my world, it's like if you're touching your database, touch as much of it as you possibly can,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
drip to everybody.
Mm-hmm. I'm of a very similar mindset, and our volunteer newsletter actually goes out to fosters as well. So people that don't actually physically come in. And so, and it comes out to all of our staff, and it goes to Jenny as well, who's our HR.
And now JASCOM.
No, JASCOM. So with you all, it'll be just under 300 people that this comes out to. So that number is so large because we have a very large foster base. So this is just some of the images that get put out. We also do happy anniversary for volunteers who have met their anniversary mark. They'll get an individual email or a happy birthday individual email, as well as a shout out in the newsletter. So going back to playgroups a little bit. So here are some statistics. Please feel free to look through. So playgroups in these statistics came from an organization called Dogs Playing for Life, which is based out of Florida. They essentially have this idea that every dog in a shelter should go out and play every day, and that saves lives. That sounds pretty great to me. So when it comes to animals in shelter, the concern isn't that they're not getting exercise. Calories are burnt through jumping, through going back and forth through plenty of stressful patterns, but we need them to mentally be stimulated. So what we do is we do play groups in our field, which is a fenced in field, about a third of an acre that we have on our property. And we have a system, it's called our ABC system, where we have at least 3 people that are point people in the field. So we do that mainly for safety. So person A is gonna be someone that if for some reason there's a safety incident between 2 dogs, they do action. They step in, they have a safety kit with them with different tools such as an air gun, things like that. So they're gonna jump in, see if the dogs need to be taken to things like safety points that we have throughout the field, which are designated points and tie-offs for dogs to get a cool down break. We have person B, B is buddy. B is essentially gonna be your second person. If another person needs to get involved to break 2 dogs up, they step into action. Then person C is call for help. So they have the radio and they're always ready to kind of call for help if for some reason the situation is escalated and the 3 people can't contain it. So that's some of what's going on in our play groups.
It makes it sound more serious than it is, but it really is just for safety. We get, if you follow our social media, you'll see a lot of our videos of the play groups posted online of the dogs being goofballs, running around. And this is also something play groups, we, you guys have heard me talk about the Unicorn Foster Program where we Best Friends paid for Brittany Fleming, who is a consultant, to come in and help us build the Unicorn Foster Program. But part of that was helping us build out the play groups as well with the staff and teaching them how to do play groups safely.
Definitely. So right now we average 1 to 2 a week. The hope is to do closer to 3 a week. And the goal is to also have play groups be available on Saturdays so that potential adopters could be escorted out to the play field, stay on the outside of the fence and be able to see dogs in action. Because a lot of the times when we have animals at home, we want to see the other animal is going to be dog social and doing well. So like Sarah said, a lot of it's goofy moments. We have play pools out there. We have really, really funny moments, and you never know a dog's personality until you get them out in the play field. So it's very rewarding.
Strictly dogs.
Yes. Can you imagine cats?
Trying to.
I can't.
So here's
Next
some of,
kitten cam.
exactly, can you imagine? So here are some of the happy pups. We have Barbie, who I talked about earlier, and I'm happy to report all these dogs have been adopted and are in great homes. So specifically Levi, who if you look at this right picture, the blockhead that's lying down, he was one of our longest stay dogs for a significant period of time. So he was there for about 5 weeks. Our length of stay is less than that. So with our long stay dogs, they tend to exhibit things such as higher stress, jumping in kennels. Sometimes they'll have mouthiness so that, you know, you'll put your hand out to pet them and they'll kind of greet you more with their tongue in their mouth than actually a kiss. So he did fantastic during his time at the shelter, and his whole time with us, he was consistently in play groups, and we think he did so well because of play groups.
And just before anybody asks, our average length of stay is 11 days.
So some things in the works. So what we're hoping to create. So we're really hoping to create some new volunteer roles. We want to expand what volunteers do. Because in a lot of ways, volunteers are hungry, and so we want to get them excited about the things that we're doing that are sometimes behind the scenes. So something that myself and Sierra have been working on together is a field service team case photographer. Yay! That would be taking photos such as this. These are extremely important when it comes to documentation. And also have a whiteboard recorder. So our whiteboard that we have in the background in this photo, there might be information that has changed from animal to animal. So we want to make sure that's accurate. It's extremely important in reporting and when we have things go through the legal system. So what are some hopes for the future? So one program I'm hoping to sink into is what I have named the Rescue Rangers. So this would be a group of kiddos up to seniors in high school who would come into the shelter for hands-on training, such as interacting with a kitten, seeing what it's like to really have an animal, seeing why it's so important to have a microchip on your animal, what the statistics behind microchipping your animal and how often they can then be returned to the owners, things like that. We also just need to have generational changes. We need to really teach what it means to shelter an animal. We're not a pound, we're a shelter. What does that mean? So that is a big thing that we're hoping to do. When it comes to rescue rangers, I have started a program with the library, with the Timberland Library right around the corner. So once a month, starting in October, the first Wednesday of the month, I'll be there with some kiddos and we're gonna be doing a lot of different educational presentations. And it's gonna specifically talk about things like what is sheltering? What do dogs eat? The really basic stuff that kids are really excited about. And we're gonna be doing some crafts, specifically making some cat toys this next time in October. My other dream is that one day we will have a outreach and vaccine clinics. This is something that is done across the country, and it's something that I think is a really great way just to get into our communities. We're able to vaccinate animals at low or no cost, and then also give out outreach resources. So things such as spay and neuter vouchers, information on what should you feed your animal? If your animal is having a litter, what you need to do. What are some options in our community for pet food pantries? Because we have some fantastic organizations like Coven Creatures that do great work. So we want to make sure people know what's out there. And then I had to show off my fur babies one more time. So thank you all very much. And I'm more than happy to answer any more questions.
Before we go to that, I have to leave. So Peter, you're in charge. And thank you. This is amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us
Thank
and
you.
wow, did you find her? Don't.
Thank you.
Good. And I wouldn't mind going on one of those tours that you do
Please.
with volunteers. If
Yes.
just to be the fly on the wall.
Yes,
Treat me like a potential volunteer.
you got it. I'll get your information from
Thank
Sarah. Yeah.
So, I know, for questions.
No, I'm happy to answer.
All you're
I
getting
love
good
all of
understanding.
your questions.
No, you know, seriously, they're all fantastic.
They're great questions.
So, you were talking about, pet food
Mhm.
and the possibility of being able to, is there a resource for pet food now
Mhm.
somewhere in the county?
We have Coven Creatures, which is a nonprofit organization that has, I want to say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, every Sunday or one Sunday a month.
I don't remember their days, but there's multiple places, so we also keep a supply stocked daily. For people to come pull food. Concern for Animals has a pet food pantry. As well as Covenant Creatures, and then the food, we supply food to the food bank oftentimes for them to hand out as well.
That's where I was headed.
We literally have multiple bins to multiple organizations. We also give food and supplies to Ole Camp Kitties as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Peter?
So that was 5C, right?
Yes.
I could just jump in real quick before
Sure.
we move to the next item. I just want to also highlight for everyone here about how well all the work that you all are doing fits really well within the 5-year strategic plan that was adopted by JASCOM, specifically talking about goal 3, which is to increase accessibility, inclusivity, and enhance community involvement. And one of the strategies was to develop more collaborative ways to leverage our reputation and working with Thurston County entities, stakeholders, and nonprofit organizations and businesses. And I think a lot of what you're doing with these programs really is highlighting that goal area and really moving that needle forward. Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you. So next item, Sarah, please.
Next item would be the field update.
Okay, thank you.
Well, hi, everyone. So whenever I was here in April, or May, right? You discussed wanting maybe more field updates, so we did just that. We have a field update for you for the summer. The first thing, and we've got some blocks here on the titles, but so these are representative for field calls for summer of 23 and 24. So it's gonna be June, July, and August. We've seen an overall increase apart from our military-based calls and a little bit of a drop in Tumwater, but overall, comparatively to last year, we had 768 calls, and then this year we have 828 for summer.
No. Okay, now do it.
Okay. And here are those same numbers broken down by types of calls. So we see that our top callouts are stray animals, enforcement, and cruelty calls. We see the grand total there that's hidden, I think that's 828 calls. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what my team has been doing for the summer, and then we'll have a couple stories to share as well. So in June, my newest Field Officer Fierce, completed her field training and was released. So we now have 5 full-time field officers servicing the community. Field Officers Robinson, Northrop, and I completed Code 3 Associates Essential Animal Services Training Module A. Within the next year, I hope to have half of us completed their entire 3-piece module, and then in the next 2 years, have everybody complete that module through Code 3 Associates. And then I completed case assistance for the assigned detective for our Mason County from back in April, if y'all remember that large-scale cruelty case. I just kind of helped them consolidate their case information and then laid out my observations for violations. That way their prosecutor and detective can understand potential charges that could be relevant.
And I think Sierra is kind of understating the amount of work that, she really did to help really be a subject matter expert in the Mason County case and help them organize everything and really show them the type of documentation that needs to take place in order for charges to not only be met, but actually seen through and, actual conclusions of the case, so that they aren't dismissed. And so she worked really hard and very closely with Mason County. And she understated how closely she worked with the detectives on that.
And as a reminder, they don't have an animal control unit, which is why I offered my help, specifically because this defendant got away in another county with very serious violations there and then went on to repeat.
Hold on. Commissioner, you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious with the working with Mason County, is there like a reciprocal agreement where they provide some service, or is there a bill? Is that a fee for service that you do for the neighboring county?
That's an excellent question. So this one was done on an emergency basis. There was a call out to literally all near jurisdictions. So Pierce County, King County, anybody that was within reasonable distance when this case arose, because there was 64 dogs being kept in horrendous conditions, all of which were emaciated, had injuries, and 3 of those dogs had even been moved to the emergency room in Thurston County that night as part of that process. And so the Mason County Sheriff's Office was not equipped whatsoever to handle this case. And so I approved Sierra to go out there along with Pierce County to go act as subject matter experts to help them with this case. And with her going out there, she was actually able to then call me and communicate how dire the circumstances were. And so I approved the intake of 14 of those animals, knowing that we were the only option and we were the only way they were going to get forensic veterinary care and exams done that would help support a case moving through the court system. So that was something that we agreed upon. There was no fee for service in that one. It was literally an emergency call for help because they were overwhelmed and did not have the capacity to run the case that they were running.
So just to add on to that.
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
So just to add on to that, why it was so important is because this defendant got away in another county, and without Sarah allowing us to step in and Dr. Smith providing forensic exams, it is very likely that she could have gotten away with this again. So we are hopeful for at least 1 felony conviction, which would prevent her from owning any animals in the future. And
So,
if,
yeah, she had all of her animals given back to her after they were removed in Skagit County. And then she moved to Mason County, and one of the dogs we took was from Skagit County, originally from that original case as well. That dog was still with her.
so she had, law enforcement had stepped in, done their investigation, allowed her to get her animals back. There was one dog that was returned to her, and the microchip matched the microchip from the case 10 years ago. So that dog suffered for over 10 years because of failure to get appropriate convictions.
Gotcha.
So in July, I provided an all-staff training on cruelty investigations and how it relates to each staff member's role. We discussed how the field team conducts investigations and prepares for large-scale intakes. We did hands-on practice for photographing animals at the scene and the importance of documentation. Our Dr. Smith over here provided a training to the field team on forensic exams for cruelty cases. She provided hands-on practice for identifying and documenting animal injuries and observations. And Field Officer Ferris and Volunteer Coordinator Megan over here attended Cops, Cars, and Kids with City of Lacey. They enjoyed connecting with community members and sharing about Joint Animal Services. Up there in that first photo is Dr. Smith's little puppy with an injury that we did practice documentation and photos on. And so now I have a few cases to talk to you about. So in mid-July, Field Officer Robinson assisted Detective Burton Crow with Thurston County Sheriff's Office and a welfare check regarding many dogs, pigs, equine, and livestock. Officer Robinson observed over 40 Great Pyrenees type dogs kept in a large enclosure together, ages ranging from around 2 months old to adults. The dogs had access to water, but not enough shelter to accommodate the number of dogs. The owner advised that he had originally tamed 8 dogs as livestock guardians, but since they were intact, they were able to breed beyond his capacity for care. So the owner had agreed to surrender 19 dogs at the initial visit, and then Officer Robinson has maintained a working relationship to intake the remainder, and then also offer spay-neuter service to prevent this overpopulation occurring again. One thing I just wanted to point out on here, I reached out to about 10 rescues for assistance with this case, and I had one rescue help us, and they took puppies from the case, which is helpful, but also our easiest adoption avenue. So whenever we are talking about these large scale intakes, I just want to emphasize how hard it is to find placement for these animals. And so it's certainly something we have to consider in working these cases. These dogs were not socialized. They do not know how to walk on a leash. They have never been in a home before. They have been around very few people in their lives. So they are very hard to place dogs.
And just to emphasize too, so there were over 40 of these Great Pyrenees mixes. And this is where a combination of also progressive animal control comes in as well. So it was not just going there and removing the animals on a warrant, right? It was having a relationship and building a trusted relationship with this person, because while it was neglect because he got overwhelmed, we removed them because he surrendered them, not because we had to get a warrant. And then we are consistently working with him month over month to reduce the number of dogs in his care. And he has agreed to allow us to help him with spay-neuter assistance. And so we will spay and neuter once he has come to the agreed upon number of 8 dogs he can have on the property. Those will all be altered so that this can't happen again.
Where's the
And-
property?
It's an unincorporated county. We can't disclose anything else because this last sentence here, Detective Burton Crow has an open investigation regarding the livestock and equine. Since the county handles that portion of the case, that is still an open investigation. So in August, our team assisted Pierce County Animal Control with a large-scale cruelty case involving over 200 chickens. You can probably guess what kind of case that might be. And so and all of those animals were taken to a local rescue. And then myself and Positive Outcomes Coordinator Becca attended a collaboration kitten yoga event with Lakewood Racquet Club, and we had a ton of fun there. We got 2 kittens adopted, and all the other kittens got adopted within a few days, so. So in late July, I responded to an after-hours call for an agency assist. Lacey police had detained a suspect for shoplifting, and her dog was tased while protecting the suspect. Witnesses had also reported that the suspect was seen hitting the dog inside the store before police arrival. And so I placed this dog on an officer hold, which meant that they would have to speak to me before getting their dog back. Fortunately, no one came forward for him. And he was adopted within 2 weeks. So congratulations to Spartacus. So he was a little rough around the edges in the field protecting mama, but he ended up being a very sweet boy. So. And then in late August, Field Officer Robinson and I were leaving a call in the county when we found 2 large dogs running at large in the middle of a busy road. We were able to contain the dogs, and then we canvassed the area. We knocked on a bunch of doors, talked to a lot of neighbors. And then after about 20 minutes, the animal owner was seen driving around, flagged us down, and we were able to get her dog. So we were able to not only prevent intake, but also create connections in the community. A lot of, we find that when we're in the community, sometimes they don't even know that they have an animal services department to come and help them. So that was really nice.
Do you guys carry chip readers?
We do, absolutely. And so if we can scan a dog in the field for a microchip, I can, as long as the microchip is registered, identify the owner. And I love to I'm gonna drive to your house and I'm gonna drop your dog off and I'm gonna bring him to the shelter if I can prevent it. So microchipping your animals, I'm always a huge advocate for.
And visual ID tags.
And visual ID tags.
So next I want to talk about the conclusion of our cockfighting case from last August. So this is State of Washington versus Martin Stanley Peters. So on August 8th of last year, Joint Animal Services received an anonymous report regarding 8 roosters tethered at the property in unincorporated Thurston County. Reporting parties stated that they overheard someone at the property discussing how the roosters were used for cockfighting and transported across the country to do so. Reporting party advised that any person could see the roosters from the street. And so we contacted our working partner, Thurston County Sheriff's Office Deputy Burton Crow, and coordinated our response. So the investigation, a few days later on August 12th, Field Officer Northrop and I arrived at the reported location where we met with Deputy Burton Crow. Residents of the property were hosting a yard sale, providing public access. We made contact with a resident who was renting a portion of the property and allowed us to complete a welfare check. We observed around 40 roosters tethered to blue barrels or A-frame structures, most with dubbed combs, wattles, and earlobes. If you don't know what those are, we got the piece up here on the sides and then down here. They were all cut. Cockfighters dubbed these to prevent serious bleeding. That way a fight will last longer. Okay. We observed an additional 23 chickens kept in varying enclosures on the property. Based on my training and experience, I was able to determine that the condition of the roosters and housing was consistent with cockfighting. So the warrant, over the next few days, Deputy Burton Crow collected additional statements and photos from all parties, as well as communication with outside agencies. Those agencies are typically going to be the Gambling Commission. I know out in Yakima, ATF may get involved as well. So he was granted a search and seize warrant for the property for a probable cause pertaining to cockfighting. We got our RCW right there for that violation. On August 19th, Joint Animal Services and Thurston County Sheriff's Office arrived back at the reported location and served the warrant. Deputies secured the property and completed the search for paraphernalia, while my team started to document the scene and impound the animals. We seized and transported 63 chickens to Joint Animal Services. So if you look closely, you can see what I'm talking about with the dubbed wattles, comb, and earlobe. Typically, if you know what a rooster looks like, he's going to have that meat piece up here. House Bill 1234. So if you are unfamiliar, this bill was passed, which allows us to post a notice advising of the animals we seized and why we seized them. It includes a petition for the defendant to present to the court. They must complete petition and post the monthly bond in order to maintain their animals throughout the trial period. If they fail to do so within those 14 days, custody is granted to the seizing agency.
And Joint Animal Services worked really closely with Pasado Safe Haven to refine this language, and we were one of the supporting agencies that pushed this through the legislature last year.
This is life-changing for field operations. We no longer, with the small times where owners are able to post that bond, we are able to provide outcomes for animals rather than holding them for the entire trial, which can take years. It is not humane to keep an animal at a shelter for that amount of time. So this has been extremely helpful.
Previous to that, the language wasn't clarified enough, and so there was a lot of confusion around it, that even though technically after the 14 days, we could obtain ownership, most lawyers and judges did not read the language that way and would mandate that we hold the animals as evidence through the entire time, also not allowing us to move those animals into foster care either. So what ended up having is these animals that we could not treat medically being housed for years, so their outcome inevitably would have been euthanasia because there was no other outlet at the end of the trial. So this was life-changing, one, because we're not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in care. A couple of years ago with another Great Pyrenees case, we probably paid a total of $100,000 in complete veterinary and animal care to house those animals for the 15 months before trial came to conclusion. So it also saves taxpayer dollars. It clarifies language so we know where we stand, the owner knows where they stand. And there's very specific outlines to that, which is one of the reasons why we really supported the bill.
Are there any limitations as to what kind of animals this coverage?
Nope, they just have to be seized under a warrant for cruelty and neglect.
It can also apply to animals seized under exigent circumstances. So if I run a call where an animal is in immediate distress, I can remove that animal. I'm still gonna go ahead and post that notice. Because if I do intend to hold the animal for, say, first degree animal cruelty charges, I'm gonna give them the opportunity to maintain custody and still post that notice. So I was able to do that within 48 hours, which is the allotted time provided. So he was able to submit a petition within the allotted time, but failed to post the bond. So there was a hearing set by the judge on September 22nd, and they did rule in favor of Joint Animal Services as being granted custody of these animals.
We were the first organization in the state to try this as a large scale after it was passed. Like it was literally within weeks of it becoming law.
So these are our veterinary exams. So while providing care for the chickens, we coordinated exams with Dr. Walsh, who is a DVM with experience in cockfighting roosters. He observed 38 roosters to have dubbed wattles, comb, and earlobes. He also observed 30 roosters to have sharpened spurs consistent with those who opt out of gap attachments. Gap attachments are going to be those tiny little knives that are attached to the natural spur of a chicken for the intent of fighting. And he confirmed that the observed alterations of the roosters were consistent with those involved in cockfighting.
So does an investigation like this stop at this one location? Or you guys see where I'm going, right? I just wonder because as you say that these animals are transported cross country for the purpose.
Even cross state.
Cross state.
There is, I know the Gaming Commission has some serious concerns in Eastern Washington that this happens on a regular basis. And this person in particular also transported to Eastern Washington as well.
So it is also important whenever we're working cases like this to have communications with the Gambling Commission and ATF to ensure that they are not already investigating a property. Because the last thing we want to do is overstep and ruin their investigation, because they could have many more components. Whenever we're concerned about the animal fighting aspect, they can be concerned about a great deal further than that.
Yakima is a perfect example. We won't go into it now, but if you guys look up the Yakima cockfighting case, you can see a perfect example of what can go wrong when you don't check and interfere with a case that's already being done on a federal level. And the handling of that case was not well done, let's say.
And one thing I will say to that is something that my unit will never do is give you the opportunity to surrender animals in lieu of charges. I'm never going to do that. I might ask you to surrender animals in the best interest of the animal, but I'm not going to make you the promise that I'm not going to move forward with charges. In my book, that's considered coercion. And so if you go and look at the body cam footage, you can see an example of that.
in Yakima, not in this case.
Yep.
So outcome of the roosters, there is, they are often hard to place. They may be referred to as aggressive and they are bred and trained to fight. That is absolutely correct. But just like this rooster here, he would sit in my lap in my office and fall asleep in my arms. They can absolutely be very gentle and sweet and absolutely have live outcomes.
Finally getting a moment of peace.
Yeah.
It was really incredible being able to watch these birds because my team helped provide care for them during their time with us. And so learning a lot about chickens during that time and also just like creating these bonds with these roosters was really incredible. And so we were so fortunate by rescues like Center Valley Animal Rescue and Rooster House Rescue. We were able to provide live outcomes for 58 of these chickens. So 58 out of 63 got live outcomes. And a few of them even went on to become house chickens, including that one there, who is my favorite. And so we are beyond thankful for their assistance and support in these cases. I'm sorry, can you look again?
Yes, I can. Because I keep messing with stuff like this.
So for the case conclusion, on August 8th of this year, so exactly 1 year after our initial report for this investigation, the defendant pled guilty and was convicted of 2 felony counts: advancement of animal fighting Class C and mutilation of an animal and furtherance of animal fighting Class B. He was sentenced to home detention for 2 concurrent terms of 42 days. Additionally, he was ordered to pay a restitution of $11,000 and some change, $10,000 of which will go to Joint Animal Services.
Keep in mind, we spent almost 40,000 in care on those animals.
40,000, 42 days. That math doesn't.
And we'll get 10,000 of that 40,000 back in restitution, maybe.
Maybe.
So then what happens to his ability to own animals?
What a great question.
This is a great
So-
intro question.
So our RCW here on animal fighting, so as it stands now, our RCW for animal fighting does not impose a penalty, including a no animal order. Comparatively, our RCW for animal cruelty in the first degree does have the penalty that you cannot own any animals in the future. So he did not get a no animal order.
It only states that you cannot own an animal for the purpose of fighting. That's it.
Which is already illegal. So I do have printouts here that go into animal cruelty in the first degree, second, and animal fighting, if you did want to take a look at that. So this is something that we do need to work to get amended. But also, it's not my job to control charges for defendants. It's my job to present a case. So would I have liked 40 felony charges? Absolutely, but I'm happy with 1.
For now.
And then that's the end. Does anybody have any questions?
Could you go back 1 slide? The RCW was covered up on the top.
Yeah.
We have handouts too for you.
Okay, sweet.
But
Oh,
that is
yeah,
going to
okay.
be RCW 16.52.117.
Okay, awesome.
And so one of the things that, again, we're Joint Animal Services is partnering with Posado's Safe Haven. And we're talking with their legal team to look at changing some language in the upcoming legislative season around that little missed line about them being able to continue to own animals after being charged with animal fighting.
So I guess my question is, what happens if it's not able to pay the fine?
Well, we can only have so much legal recourse to follow up with those fines. And so there is, and a lot of times what does happen in these cases is we only get paid a certain amount. They're not required to pay it all at once. They can make it in payments. It could literally be $5 a month for the rest of their life. They could choose not to pay or file that they can't afford to pay, and we may potentially never see that money, that restitution.
So
That's no good.
I know.
Well, I guess you don't really have a judgment for the restitution portion. You just have a judgment for the charges, animal cruelty charges.
So we submitted the full amount that it cost us for restitution, but because it was cruelty in the second degree, in the law, it states there is a max of $10,000 they can be charged in restitution.
Gotcha.
So it was, that 10,000 is outlined in the RCWs of like what the allotted amount of restitution to be paid out.
And how old is that, Earl?
I do not know.
That's kind of, I mean, things have been inflated in the last 5 years,
Zero.
right? Maybe the number need to be bumped up a little bit.
This is also probably the fourth cockfighting case in the last year in this state,
So,
at least.
so I guess my question is, okay, so 10,000,
Mhm.
right? How do you collect that?
That's just it. The court can mandate restitution, they can go in and pay the courts, but really it depends on follow-up on, you know, debt collection.
So you have a judgment, can you attach it to title? Because if they are the property owner
I don't
and
believe,
you attach it to their title, they can't move.
I don't believe so.
Get it in the language.
We could,
So it's certainly something we can take a look at.
absolutely.
Especially if they're the property owner, or if they own property in the state at all.
Mhm.
You might have some way of getting some of that back.
So I wanted to make sure that Sierra updated you guys on this case because we talked about it last year when it initially happened. She updated you guys on it when she did her field date, and we wanted to make sure that you guys got the full conclusion of it as well. So it's just a perfect example, and this went fast. This was basically a year from the date of first complaint, and this was a fast moving case. Can you imagine if we had to have those 63 chickens still on site during that entire time?
Well, I mean, it's also whenever we're talking about, I mean, this is one of how many cruelty cases we have. We cannot hold all of these animals for years. We just don't have the capacity for it, so.
I remember this, a similar conversation when we were talking about livestock. And we were talking about the cost of, you know, holding this livestock for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and just an astronomical cost, which was one of those kind of things that needed to be talked about and worked through. You know, horses probably cost a whole lot more to feed than chickens,
They
and
sure
so,
do.
okay,
You're also not gonna get your back or your leg broken by a chicken either.
right.
Any other questions? I think we have the director's report. Oh, Commissioner.
Yeah, maybe they already went out, but I haven't seen it in my inbox yet. Are all these presentations being emailed out?
You'll find them attached to the civic clerk link that you received for the packet.
Okay.
They'll be all attached to the agenda and you can review each print, all the PowerPoints are attached to each one.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, looks like we have the director's report up next, if you're okay with that, Councilmember Agabi.
Yes, please, Sarah.
All right, so we haven't seen you since Becca went to the Best Friends National Conference and presented her research about having a positive outcomes coordinator and allocated resources. And so this is her. She received a scholarship to go and present her findings at the conference in a poster session. So very exciting. It was very well received. We also hosted Commissioner Klaus on a ride-along in August. She got to ride along with Sierra and Officer Ferris, thank you, I was forgetting Michelle's last name, for about half a day to go out on some calls and see what we do, and really get to know the field team a little bit and what our day-to-day looks like.
It was awesome, for the record.
We loved having you.
It was awesome. It was super fun.
Did you get to go in the new truck?
Yeah,
She did, uh-huh.
And then, as I updated you guys in July, we received emergency grant funding from Best Friends Animal.
Wayne raised his
Oh,
hand.
Commissioner, do you have your hand up again? I'm sorry.
Monsieur Fournier?
Sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Oh, okay. I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So we used that $5,000 grant fund, to basically run a week-long adoption special in August, where we were able to do 59 adoptions that week on average. That same week last year, we did 25. So we more than doubled adoptions by waiving our fees. Just as a point of reference, when we're looking at reviewing some of the municipal code, one of the things that we really want to look at is the director being able to waive fees when it's in the best interest of the animal and the person. Currently, we cannot waive adoption fees because it would be considered gifting of public funds. And so thankfully, we do have organizations like Best Friends who understands and steps in, and they were able to basically pay for the adoption fees for that whole week for everybody.
And you said those dollars came from?
Best Friends Animal Society, that was $5,000. We are also participating in a nationwide return to home challenge. It is where we're being challenged as a municipal agency to increase our return to owner numbers in the month of September. And we can do this in a couple of different ways. We're making sure that all of our ACOs have microchip scanners that are up and ready. We've also signed up for a new program called Petco Loved Lost, which will actually replace our lost and found reporting system. Petco Love Lost will be using facial recognition to help identify pets that are being, if you upload a picture of a lost pet or a found pet, it will use facial recognition to see if anybody else has uploaded that pet into the system or if it's at the shelter, because Petco Love Lost also talks to our shelter management system.
that's awesome.
So we're doing a few things like that, making some easy operational changes. And hoping to increase, we will automatically get $1,000 grant from Best Friends for participating. And we're aiming for the goal to win the $10,000 grant, but we are competing nationally. So I don't know if we'll have the highest numbers.
Okay, let's do some manifestation real quick. It's not, but I think that we can do it.
Sorry guys, there's a lot of stuff. Best Friends Animal Society has literally been,
Your best friend?
yes. So we're also participating in a shelter collaboration, working with Seattle Area Feline Rescue because they have a really great foster program. And so Best Friends Animal Society is going to be granting us $22,000 over the next 18 months to increase our positive outcomes to hopefully hit 90%. And that includes the mentorship in our foster program, helping support our fosters with medical, and also looking at increasing retention for adoption. So reducing returns from owners as well as RTOs, and making sure we're providing services as well as resources to people looking to surrender pets. And so this will be a mutual partnership and collaboration over the next 18 months, with the goal being that we will consistently be at 90% every single month at the end of this collaboration. Staff on the move. So we recently had a customer service specialist transition over to another shelter. She was promoted, which was really exciting, and she got to work with a former manager who she really liked, and that opened up a position at our front desk. And so our animal care tech, Mariah, who's been with us since 2022, interviewed and got appointed to the position. And so she's been promoted, and we're very excited. We really try to encourage internal promotion as much as possible. And so while we're sad to see Mariah go, we're looking forward to her starting in that position. Commissioner, do you have a question now?
Well, actually, come here, Buster. I just got a new dog couch, and since I'm here sitting here with a bunch of animal lovers, I thought I'd show you guys Buster's new dog. Come here, Buster. He's not taking to the couch yet. Come here, let's see. Come here, Buster. Come here, buddy. Come on. There he is.
Aw.
Hi, buddy.
Oh, what a cutie.
Now he's got a couch. That's it. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
That's awesome.
And last but not least, we're almost done, guys. Our happy tale, which we know concludes our evening, and this is Mabel. You guys got the full email that I sent out in the packet, and I just did a snippet here because we would not have had room for the full story. Long story short, these were fosters of ours, and they actually are a medical foster of ours. And so they took Mabel because she had reoccurring ear infections that weren't getting better. And so they were her foster while she was going through those ear infections, fell in love, decided to adopt her, ended up going the full route of getting her ear fixed surgically. And she's just the best dogo ever, and they're so happy to have her. And so these are some pictures of her in her foster, now her home. And so this is another one of those great, just different stories. We don't call them foster failures, we call them foster successes, because you didn't fail, you just ended up keeping one.
Yep.
And so with that, I'll stop sharing. And if you guys have any questions for me about the director's report or anything else,
We don't get a second Happy Tales?
not this time, no. I know I spoiled you guys last time with two.
There you go. Nacho was in there too. I didn't want to point him out, but my favorite camping buddy was pictured.
Buster got a couch, that's Happy Tales.
He's trying to get used to it. I wanted bigger. It's a little small, but he's a big boy.
Well, I think that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions, Councilmember Agabi.
Any questions for Sarah? Or anybody in the room? Well, Sarah, I think we are done.
I think we are ready to adjourn.
Well, you guys have a nice evening.
Good job, Buster.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.